Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the broadcast after such a long time. So, the first attempt at recording the broadcast has already been done in the morning, and I was not really happy with the quality of content that I have recorded. So, this is take two. To the vast number of regular viewers and the Patreons, and not Patreons really, I just learned a new word and I really thought of plugging it somewhere. So here we are. Not Patreon subscribers, to the vast number of subscribers and to the vast number of people who have been, on the commenting on the in the comment section of my YouTube channel, demanding answers, asking for new videos. Well, which are absolutely none. Well, here you go. I have finally decided to come out of hibernation after taking a gap of what, 4 to 5 days, I think. I don't really remember who this. Of 4 to 5 days, I have finally decided to come out of hibernation and finally record a video. So here we are, again in traffic. This time on my new ride. Long story. Basically, my bike was older bike was in an accident, and the accident was really a display of the unconditional love and support that Lady Luck shows and bestows onto me, and all those things. And yeah, that was a remarkable display of that. And yeah, obviously, I'm gonna yap about it. I'm gonna tell you a story about it. I was not really going to record a video right now, but I am seeing what seems to be a very long and never-ending traffic. So I thought, why not make the most out of it? So here we are, baby. I haven't slept properly yesterday, so obviously I will be yawning a lot, and eventually my brain might freeze and I might not be able to form a single logical sentence. But bear with me. And at this point, it really feels that I'm speaking to myself because let's face it, I'm the only one who's gonna be listening to this. So, few days back, my bike underwent an accident, and extremely short story. My bike underwent an accident. I had insurance. I claimed the insurance. I got a little bit of money, and I put the remaining money in, and I got a new bike. Thank you everyone for tuning in. That's the video. Goodbye. But let's face it, I might be at least an hour away from my home, considering the extent of traffic. So I am gonna obviously tell a longer version. Pretext: I had the Dominar 400, and I had the Dominar 400, and basically the bike has a really inspiring evolution story, and my sources are obviously Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and a few random YouTube videos which are not even from renowned YouTube channels, and hence this information is extremely trustworthy, and you should absolutely quote me on this and all of those things. Anyways, so the Dominar was launched somewhere between 2013, basically somewhere between 2010 and 2015, I think. So at that point, when it was first launched, it was obviously at that point the only 300 plus cc bike that was available in the market was a Royal Enfield, and I think the KTM, which was just launched recently. But the KTM was more of a sports bike, and there was no real competitor to the Royal Enfield segment. Is obviously what I remember, and is obviously what the video which I referred to said. Anyways, so at that point, Bajaj, with their brilliant marketing department, had decided to poke the bear, which is Royal Enfield. Keep in mind, at that point, and even to some extent, even now, Royal Enfield bikes, and the bikes at that time were, I think, Classic 350, Classic 500, and Bullet 350. Those were considered to be absolute status symbols, and people directly related them to prestige, and owning a Royal Enfield meant that you would command a lot of respect, and people would fear you, and you'll be extremely relevant and all those things. So such a and this was not really a kind of marketing initiative by Royal Enfield. People themselves had created this hype with the brand. So at that point, it was really one of the most major players, and you would think that before poking the bear, or before going up again, or directly declaring such a huge competitor, before directly setting such a huge competition and to poke such a huge fan base, we would absolutely do a lot of R&D. But what Bajaj did can simply be described as some random person who does gym every day, who has a lot of infrastructure, who has probably even trained a lot of athletes, suddenly decides to wake up and challenge Muhammad Ali for a boxing match in Muhammad Ali's own home ground, in his own home turf, and has also pissed Muhammad Ali in such a way that is absolutely fuming, and he's gonna come and he's gonna come at you at and obviously Muhammad Ali isn't. I'm gonna even say that, because it's not Royal Enfield who were pissed at this marketing initiative, but it was their fan base. So it's not like Muhammad Ali is gonna be pissed at you for poking them. It was Mike Tyson. No one is lesser than the other, but still, I'm still gonna put it out there. So such was the thing that Royal Enfield did. Extremely good marketing initiative, extremely good ad, extremely good bike placement, and they, from a marketing point of view and from a visual point of view, they ticked all the boxes, but they forgot to check the most important thing, which was reliability. Let's face it, at that point, Royal Enfield engines used to vibrate, had really bad NVH levels, were made a lot of noise, and but still, in spite of all the abuse that their fan base put them through, putting loud exhaust onto them, trying to generate intentional backfire and all those stencils, the engines were rock solid. So at that point, one would think that obviously it's Royal Enfield, and since Bajaj has directly decided to go against Royal Enfield, they must have built a very reliable and a very strong bike. But absolutely, they didn't. The first iteration of the Bajaj Dominar, which is now also referred as the BS3 Dominar, faced a lot of issues. The crankcase was blowing up randomly. The engine was highly unreliable. It was designed for higher compression ratio. It was basically KTM 390 engine source in which Bajaj did slight modifications to integrate their own technology, which is DTSI, and tried to make it work, but absolutely couldn't because they hadn't tuned they hadn't tuned the engine according to their use case. As a result, the engine was extremely unreliable. And by this time, by doing so, Bajaj had, Indian market is like they'll hype you up equally as fast as they'll drop you down. Then your own people, forget the people you are against. Your own people will turn against you, and that also might be a story of every Indian household. Anyways, this also the behavior of the Indian market can also be understood with the help of an example. It can be explained by comparing any Indian household where the father had a lot of property when there were brothers in the family, and the father, since he was not really an educated one, people cheated him, and people cheated him and took his land away for pennies. But they didn't really do it really properly. It was really illegal. So the brother who had learned everything, who had kind of gotten a degree in all these things, decided to get all the land back, only to realize that once all the land was gotten back, his own brothers had turned on him. This actually doesn't explain the situation. The situation actually is that when you fail at that point, your own people will turn against you. And I might have given an entirely random example, which may or may not be related to my personal life. Anyways, so Bajaj failed really bad. What is the tendency of Indian manufacturers to treat their first batch of customers for their bikes as their customers rather than actually investing on R&D. So this time they really learned from the BS3 version and launched the BS4 version, which now had a dual barrel exhaust, and the engine was reliable AF. They had over-designed everything. They had tuned the engine to its maximum. They had made the engine what can literally be described and what also is the most appropriate word for it: bulletproof. Bulletproof is a terminology which don't directly go by the name bulletproof, meaning if you shoot it with a bullet, nothing will happen to it. But rather you can define it as, you can put it into any situation, any circumstance, and it will still persist, and it will still be undestructible. So that's what they really did. And so the BS4 Dominar was an extremely reliable one, but since the first batch had already destroyed the reputation of the brand and the what you can say and the name of the bike, hence no one really went after the BS4 Dominar. Then, as a part of a marketing exercise and to really show how strong the Bajaj Dominar is, Bajaj sent the Bajaj Dominar on different ODCs to different parts of India, and the Bajaj Dominar covered 1.5 lakh kilometers, somewhere around 1.5 lakh or 2 lakh kilometers, where they literally gathered teams of riders and they gave them the Bajaj Dominar, and each group of riders covered at least a minimum of 15,000 kilometers over a span of a few days. And then at the end of the ODC, they took feedbacks from the drivers, asking them what things would you wish would be slightly different on the bike. And then after taking those feedbacks, they really integrated them. So no one really complained about the engine, no one really complained about the bike, no one really complained about the suspension. They just wanted the bike with touring friendly accessories. So that's what they really got. Bajaj Dominar now came with a front visor, that is the visor on the top of the headlight head, came with knuckle guards, came with reinforced internals and reinforced externals as well. Now, first it had a belly pan which was of plastic and which was more for the sake of looks, but now it received a really functional underbody aluminum plate, I think, which might help the Dominar, which helped the Dominar when it came to crossing low ground clearance regions, and helped reduce the scratches to the lower part of the engine. And then it got the tail rack. I couldn't remember this word in my first recording, but somehow I'm more fluent now, and I'm able to put full sentences in a better format. Anyways, that's what the Bajaj Dominar got. The point I'm trying to make here is that all these things, all these testings, all these odysseys, with the experience of more than 1.5 lakh kilometers into my Dominar, which is obviously the BS6 Dominars, all the reinforcements and everything. But for some reason, when I had my accident, it somehow put the bike into its worst. Since every mechanical component is designed up to a certain factor of safety, and the accident that I had somehow pushed the engine to its absolute limit and damaged the engine entirely. And it also did a few damage to the other components of my bike. And there is really no other way to say this. But yeah, it was put in the worst case scenario, and literally it was put in such a my bike has a warranty of 5 years or 75,000 kilometers, but I was not even able to claim the warranty because the accident that I had felt in the area which was not covered under the warranty claim. The warranty claim basically said that if anything happens to the engine in its normal running, no matter what that running be, even if you take it to the most extreme regions, if something happened to the engine naturally in its normal functioning area, not when you jump the engine or when there is some structural, basically you get the point. So through all these things, only then your warranty is claimable. And somehow the accident that I had was entirely my fault and was entirely a lapse of judgment. So what had happened is I was cruising at a speed of 70 to 80 kilometers per hour on a highway, fairly open highway, and I saw a car in front of me which was again at least 50 to 80 meters ahead of me. There was a fair amount of, what you can say, there was a fair gap there, and I could have easily I had a lot of time to make a judgment, but because I'm an extremely reasonable person who makes extremely reasonable and extremely logical decisions, I decided to make the worst one. So what I did was, instead of braking, or instead of, the car was to the extreme left side, and I was at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. So even if I had joined the faster lane, I would still be faster, and no one behind me would have to brake. But instead of doing that, I went to the further left side of the car, the small gap which was present in the left side of the car, and there was an open drain cover there, and my bike literally, the engine literally banged into that hole, and which led to the damage of the engine beyond repair. So the service people quoted an amount of 2 lakh rupees for the repair, and let's be honest, in that much amount of money, I could have gotten a new bike entirely. Thank God I had the insurance. So I made the insurance claim, and I really was able to get a new bike. So the new bike that I've gotten is definitely my dream bike. I always wanted one. I developed an admiration for the bike very soon, before even it was launched. When I used my Dominar 400, I always thought that, somehow, not in terms of performance, but in terms of comfort, and in terms of usability, and in terms of all those things, there was this feeling that the Dominar is falling short. So there was absolutely that feeling. And then there were other bikes in the segment that I could have gotten. First of all, at the time of getting the Dominar, there was the Himalayan 411, which my father and my family was adamant on buying. But at that time, due to a reason that I'll tell later on in the video, I did not buy one. So there's that. And yeah, so let's speak about the scenario in which led to me spending 2 lakh out of nowhere, and once again making a decision which in any way is not going to increase my money, but is going to decrease even further, because I financed this bike, and now I even have to pay the interest, obviously. And I've just made life even worse for me. I've increased the debt, debt, not depth, debt, which I already had. So there's that. So the car, keep in mind, I was able to comfortably dodge the car without panicking even the slightest. So it was really not an impromptu decision in which you can say that, okay, I could have done this, I could have done that, but because it was a panic situation, I made the wrong decision. First situation which had a lot of unknowns was to not do anything and to directly go and hit the car from the behind. I had my insurance, and in this case, I would have gotten slightly more money, and even the company itself would have helped me in, I would have spent way less of an amount. But not the ideal situation considering health and safety. I might have injured I might have injured myself even. What is the right? I could have injured myself to an extent which was beyond repair. I could have damaged myself. I could have damaged the person in front. 80 kilometers per hour is a lot of speed. For reference, most of the safety related tests are done at 60 kilometers per hour. So not a really ideal situation, even though the financial loss would have been much less. I could have braked, but then I was naturally at a speed from the left side of the lane, and I naturally assumed that because I'm at such a speed, and so anyone who might be following me must be seeing that I'm at such a speed. So they too must be on similar kind of speed, and that's why they wouldn't be able to to slow as much as I would be able to. And then, even though I would be able to stop successful, they would rear end me, and then which would again lead to serious injuries. Even though, let's face it, it was a fairly open highway. I could have done that. Someone might have panicked, but they would have easily been able to stop their car because it was on the left side of the vehicle. And unlike me, others are actually sensible and they actually fear for their life and they actually take necessary precautions and they actually drive at a slower speed and they actually consider the fact that even though we can drive properly, still someone in our vicinity might not drive as properly as we do, and this might lead to an accident. Anyways, so obviously I didn't brake as well. The second option was to, since it's a three lane highway, okay. The the rightmost lane is obviously for the fastest if you consider the rule, which, let's face it, no one really follows. But the rightmost lane is for is for the fast moving vehicles. The middle lane is for the slightly slow moving vehicles, and the left lane is for anyone who wishes to join the service road. And even the woman in front of me was in the right lane, but maybe she also made a lapse in judgment and she decided to brake, which again, as I have repeatedly proven myself, I could have easily avoided. So I could have gone in the middle lane. It was again a fairly open highway. I didn't. I got a glance behind. I didn't see. I saw a car which was behind, but then again, even if I would have aggressively joined that highway, the car would have been able to slow down and accident would have been avoided very easily. But I didn't do that as well because I thought that, obviously, because I think so highly of myself, I thought that obviously I am an expert driver and no one is as good as me, and I am the best and everyone else is inferior. And the way I would react to the situation, no one else will, because obviously what the way they would react would have been absolutely logical. So then I didn't try to overtake from there because I thought that no one would be as aware as I am, and then they would end up rear-ending me from the back, which, let's face it, would not have happened because everyone else was slow and I was comparatively fast. What else could have been done? I could have slowed down and then taken whichever route I wanted to. May it be right, may it be left. I could have hit the brake, and since I was already slowing down, I could have checked my mirror and then decided which was the most ideal way to go through, whether it was going to the left, going through the light, or even, as a matter of fact, stopping. There was enough distance, could have been approximately 70 to 80 meters, and I could have easily made the decision at that time. But then again, I obviously didn't do that because I thought that I am an expert of a driver, which I clearly am not, and I can easily beat this. And for some reason, I think of myself to be in a race, and obviously, braking would lead to me losing crucial point on the circuit, crucial time on the circuit, and then I would lose a lot of time, which would merely have been mere seconds, and even if it was somewhere And even if it was in hours, still it was worth, because at least it wouldn't have costed me lakhs of rupees, which obviously, considering the rate of interest, is going to be even higher. So that's what happened. And then I didn't do that because obviously I was I didn't want to lose so-called crucial time. I didn't want to lose those seconds. I wanted to make up those seconds. So absolutely, I took the difficult way. Which again, to be completely reasonable here, I thought that anyone, if anyone else would have been there, anyone would have. I obviously overestimated the situation. But then I thought that if I go towards the left, no one else would go towards the left because there was a very slight place there, and I am slightly skilled, and I knew even though the place there is really small, I can absolutely make it, and I can absolutely go from that place. That's why I went from the left to again avoid injury and avoid accidents. So even though I saved the others, but I ended up making a lot of financial loss for myself. So whatever amount I got from my insurance claim, I decided that okay, as is, I had a high CC bike which naturally consumed a lot of fuel, and I was trying desperately to cut my expenses. So at that point, anyone would treat this as a second chance in life and then go for a bike. So there are a lot of bikes in 200cc range too, which are not as powerful as my dream bike, but they get the job done. And let's face it, the true power of my dream bike is only going to be unleashed on long tours, which I don't think so I'm ever gonna do. Even now, as a matter of fact, I'm stuck in traffic, and I don't know when I'll reach home because the traffic right now is really intense, and I don't really understand why it is so intense. Back to the point. So, what was I saying? So I could have done that. Any logical person would have thought of this as a second chance that life has given, and would have gone for a lesser CC bike, gone for a bike which gets the job done. And obviously, because this was a sudden expense, they would have obviously taken the cheaper route, but obviously the more optimal route, and all those things. And would have really done much better. Like I received about 1.5 lakhs from my insurance claim, and I could have easily added 40 to 50,000 rupees, and then gotten a bike which was similar to my dream bike, but had slightly less power, but would have given 2.5 times more economy as compared to the bike which I've currently got. Not 2.5 times, okay, let's be real, 1.5 times, but 2.5 times more economy than my my previous bike, and would have really been a really logical decision to do so. But since I am a person who makes extremely reasonable decisions and who takes his life very seriously and is not at all a hypocrite. By the way, I have complained, I have, kind of put this, what you can say, put this persona, which is the truth, by the way. I am barely being, with respect to the responsibility that I have, and with respect to the future that I wish to have, and with respect to my future plans. In previous videos, I have mentioned multiple times that I'm trying to buy a 7-seater SUV, So obviously the more I would spend right now, the lesser the amount of money I would have for my SUV. So considering all these factors, you would have expected me to go for the X-Pulse 210, which was 2.10 lakhs on road, which provided an economy of 45 to 50 because it's a 210cc bike, and it has an engine which is not that much of a high of a compression ratio, and it is obviously easier to less cheaper to maintain because it's of Hero. The parts are much cheaper, and life would have been really easy if I would have gone for that bike. But I didn't. I instead went for the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. 450cc engine has functionally is, with respect to the capability of the bike, is extremely similar to the Royal Enfield 450, to the Royal Enfield, to the X-Pulse 210, or let's put it the other way around. X-Pulse 210 is really similar to Royal Enfield 450. The power to weight ratio is almost identical, and capabilities are identical. But the X-Pulse is definitely more capable when it comes to off-roading, because in off-roading you not only require loads and loads of suspension travel, but you also require the bike to be lighter. In which case the X-Pulse is obviously more capable, but then Royal Enfield has lots of power and lots of torque and lots of all those things, which obviously the X-Pulse doesn't. And that's exactly and obviously, did I mention the economy? The economy of the X-Pulse 210 is close to 50, which is 1.5 times the Royal Enfield Himalayan in the economy mode, and if driven extremely carefully, can give a mileage of 30 to 32. And again, double underline, if driven carefully. Let's face it, once the first servicing is done, I am not going to. So I have managed to increase the maintenance cost. I might have increased the daily operating cost of the vehicle, and I might have, even though I was barely being able to make the ends meet, and doing this will obviously push my timeline back a lot, but still I have gone for this bike, and still I have managed to get it. The more I think about it, the more I realize that it was a bad decision. Even though it is my dream bike, and even though if I completely drop the 7-seater SUV plan, oh my god, it not only makes my life easier and it makes the bike much more affordable, but I'm able to meet more ends than what I am able to meet right now. I can increase my spending budget slightly, and I can get rid of most of the things, and I can obviously do things a bit more smoothly as compared to right now. So there's that. And allow me to take a brief break because I have to make a really important phone call. I'll be back in a minute. And I am back. I don't know why, but the traffic is really intense today. And I might require more time than what I had initially intended for me to record all these things and broadcast it. So, anyways, didn't do all of those things. Didn't take the logical decision, listen to my pride. Really did what was best for my ego. I mean, there was some amount of there was some amount of what you can say. There was some amount of logical. हो गया there was some amount of what you can say. What was I gonna say? Yeah, it was more like I saw the opportunity, and even though wasn't the most logical and the most financially appealing one, I still decided to go for it. And I decided to take the decision, and now I have ended up with the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, which only future will tell how much affordable or unaffordable it is. This is the thing with me, I can choose to be happy. I can. It was my decision, right? So I can choose to be happy, and I can choose to be at peace with the decision I've taken. I can choose to enjoy the moment. I can choose to postpone my plans slightly and try to live in the moment and be happy with it and all those things and enjoy the moment as I have it. But obviously, I am choosing to not be happy. I am choosing to sulk over the decision that I've made, and I am choosing to, you know, spend time and energy regretting rather than actually be happy. But again, I would have done this a lot more times and in a lot more and a much higher frequency if I would not have been able to, you know, put this forth or let it out in front of anyone. And I mean, this is not actually the reason, but it can be considered as one of the reasons that my family members to wished for me to get a bike associated with Royal Enfield rather than any other brand. Well, there was this option where there was a bike, Scram 440, which was similar which is similar to the previous version of the Himalayan, actually with a few modifications in the powertrain. It is similar to the Himalayan 411. It has 190-degree front suspension travel, 180-degree rear suspension travel, as opposed to the 200 suspension travel in the front for the Himalayan and 200 suspension travel at the back for the Himalayan 450, that is. And there was hardly a difference of 10 to 50 mm worth of suspension travel, but still, I was still able to. I could have, made peace with that suspension travel and would have saved somewhere around 85 to 90,000. And obviously, I didn't do that. But again, that too is backed this time by an extremely important, you know, functional issue. The engine is air cooled, so it will heat up a lot in the traffic, and it will be extremely non-ideal for me to go for that engine because it will most of my driving is in the traffic. And if I would have gone for an engine which is not traffic friendly, the rides would have been extremely uncomfortable and the economy would have fallen down the rabbit hole, which is less than ideal. Now I am thinking logically, by the way, or maybe this is not logical thinking, and this is actually me thinking how me trying to justify my own decision, really. So there's that. And yeah, I could have done that. But yeah, even though it was not the most ideal situation, but the scenario in which I am right now is also less than ideal. The only advantage right now that I feel that I have gotten in this situation is that I was developing this, you know, I was developing this back pain due to the sitting position on my Dominar, and due to the Indian roads, and due to there being lesser suspension travel as opposed to the Himalayan 450. So I was getting the feeling of having somewhat of a chronic back pain, which right now I don't, even though I've been in much more traffic, and even though I've been to the exact same road and maybe even